Photography is an important part of my life, but it's not my whole life. I don't have the power to drop everything to go on adventures on a whim, no matter how much I'd like to. As a result, when an opportunity arises to take a truly special trip, my usual response is,
time to go.
And this trip, well, there are many other photographic opportunities more special to me than this one was. I was headed to the Canadian Arctic to visit a Ewituck National Park on Baffin Island. This place is well known for its staggering peaks, extreme cliff faces, and unique scenery. I dreamed of hiking this place for years, and this past summer, I finally got my chance. I couldn't have been more excited to take this on, but unfortunately, this dream of mine wasn't going to play out like I'd imagined. I had no idea at the time, but I was traveling to one of the most difficult and frustrating photography experiences of my life. And make no mistake, there were signs that this trip wasn't going to go as planned. The park had been closed earlier in the year for high river levels, and the weather reports clearly indicated that this could be an issue still. Regardless, I was not going to be deterred. This is a story about missed opportunity, about making the most of a difficult situation, and about being thankful for experiences, even if they weren't what you were hoping for. This is a story of my trip to a Ewituck National Park. Access to the park can be gained through one of two small communities in Nunavut. I accessed the park through Pangon. This town of nearly 1,500 people sits just south of the park and has a backdrop of a Ewituck's towering mountains. The community itself is heavily reliant on air access for both people and for goods, making the community somewhat isolated. As a result, it's not uncommon to see as many people riding quads as driving cars, and in any weather. I had arrived a day early to ensure that I could prepare for the trip, giving me a bit of time to explore up and down the town's dirt roads, limited stores, and one restaurant. Unfortunately, while I was here, the KFC had neither chicken nor anyone who could cook it. Gradually through the day, the weather turned for the worse, making me really start to wonder if I'd made a terrible decision.
Boy, am I happy I don't start my hike today. I lucked out on that.
How naive I was. The incredible wind was yet another warning of how powerful nature can be in this incredibly remote place. If this were a movie, I'd call these conditions, and my sturdy optimism, foreshadowing. Thankfully, the hotel provided respite from this messy weather, and even provided 3 meals a day if you wanted it. While staying in the north came with some caveats, the hotel gave me everything I could have needed and enough space to properly prepare for this hike. Unfortunately for me, however, the hotel couldn't control the weather, and a power outage the night before the hike left me preparing in the dark with even more signs that things were not going to go to plan. By this point in the trip, my spidey senses had started to notice a concerning pattern, but I'd come too far to turn around here. Ewituck was calling me, and I still planned on answering. It wasn't long before the park's towering peaks and misty mountains made me forget my concerns, leaving me spellbound.
Okay, well, the guide, the outfitter, Peter, has just dropped me off, and I am well and truly alone. And now it's time to start this hike, and yeah, hopefully have quite the adventure. It's been an adventure so far, to say the least, but I've got quite a hike ahead of me today. Hoping to get up to Schwarzenbach Falls. And the reason I'm trying to get there today is because the water levels in the falls tend to be lower earlier in the morning. And so if I can camp there, it'll make that river crossing a whole lot easier. And certainly river crossings are the most dangerous part of hiking in this park. So I really do want to take that seriously, especially because river levels are quite high right now. So got to be careful, got to take my time. We'll see how we do, but hey, view's not bad so far. Just stunning walking into the mist like this. I've only just started, but man, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, but this is going to be work, frankly, because water levels are very high, and all these little easy rivers that I should be able to step over are a little bigger and a little faster than I suspect they usually are, meaning that I've got to spend a little bit more time hunting around for a good spot to try and skip across on rocks rather than taking my shoes off and going through the water. So it might be a bit of a long hike today. Well, it will be a long hike today, but let's keep at it. So I should probably explain how this hike has been planned. I am in the Akshiuk Pass of a ULU National Park, a place that I've wanted to visit for probably 8 years now. I finally had the opportunity. However, unfortunately, I'm going it alone. It's going to be just me on this hike, so I'm going to need to be very careful to take my time, be careful, take as many safety precautions as I possibly can. Now, a ULU National Park is on Baffin Island in the Canadian Arctic. And of course, there are polar bears in the Canadian Arctic. However, fortunately, bears aren't really common in the park. And I hope to God that I don't see one. Though I do have some screamers and flares to scare one away if it does find its way to me. But with that said, bears are much more common on the north side of this park, and I am avoiding that. I am hiking from the south up to Summit Lake, and then I'm coming back. So today, my first day of this journey, our objective is to get to Schwarzenbach Falls. And to get there, I'm going to pass ULU Shelter, Crater Lake, and cross Crater Lake outflow. So I will have to probably get my boots off and into my Crocs so we can get across that that creek. And potentially this creek.
While I may have whined and moaned about the extra water in these creeks, making my hike longer and harder, that water was also likely responsible for this coming photo opportunity.
Well, I've only been hiking for a little more than an hour now, but I think I might have already found my first shot. It's just so cool. There are so many streams everywhere, and the sun peeked out for just a moment. Man, I don't know if I got it though, so here's hoping. But God, it's just overwhelming and really hard to show the scale here. With a lot of goose crap everywhere. There it is. There is ULU Shelter. Well, you can certainly tell that it's been wet here. Yeah, the water's running directly under the shelter. So, yeah, I kind of suspect that they had a little bit of rain the other night. The peaks are incredible though. Really, really something. Very cozy, very cozy. Thankfully, the sun is actually starting to come out and the views are starting to open up. I'm starting to get a much better look at some of these peaks around me here, and it's overwhelming. There's just so much, so much. It is stunning today, stunning. God, this is gonna take forever to get where I'm going if I'm gonna stop and shoot non-stop like this. Time to take a little break. I think the trip odometer says 9.5 clicks. Still have probably another 6 to go before I get to Schwarzenbach Falls, but I thought I'd get a little bit of lunch in me because I'm starting to get pretty hungry, and I have not tried these yet, but I hope they're good because I have a lot of them. It's gonna work. That's gonna work. Well, getting up the dunes was pretty challenging, and I think I still have a few to go, but I'm actually finding shots up here. I found an image that I think is pretty cool, and it frames just this unbelievable waterfall. So, oh boy, pretty neat actually. I'm hopeful that this will work because we have these nice ridges in the sand, but a complete contrast to the left without nearly the same level of order to the sand, but the sand almost also creates this arcing curve in towards the center, towards this beautiful waterfall. It kind of makes you feel almost off balance when you look at it. At least that's what I get out of it. But I love that it just keeps dragging you in towards that waterfall, and it just feels like the whole thing is moving. It's it's a weird one, but I don't know, I kind of like it so far. Maybe I'll feel differently once I get it on the computer, but if it's any good, I'll show it to you.
I did feel differently when I got it on the computer. The waterfall was a bit too far, and the cloud was more of a distraction than a help to the scene. Seeing that same waterfall over Crater Lake only a few feet further up the dune, however, gave me an idea to try and create something different. I ended up producing this image as a composite of both scenes, but this seemed to be a bit more interesting to me, though it isn't a real photograph.
see this, but off in the distance, that Schwarzenbach River, Schwarzenbach Falls. I gotta cross that tomorrow morning, and I should be camping very close to there. So yeah, we're making progress here. We're making progress. Blue sky. I don't think I've seen that since Ottawa. Oh, I hope that's a sign of good fortune. Well, I finally reached the Crater Lake outflow, and it's time for the first river crossing. Now, I found a couple spots. I've walked up and down a little bit looking for the right place to do this, and I found a few higher up where the water is actually moving pretty fast, but there's a lot of rocks, or we can go a longer distance where it's fairly shallow. So I think I'm gonna get dressed to get this done and test it out and see what it looks like before I try and take my pack across. So wish me luck. The first bit was the easy part. Now it gets a little deeper, it looks like, so here we go again.
Up to this point, the water crossings were very easy. Unfortunately for me, there was one braid which was very difficult to cross, and unfortunately, I didn't record it. This next clip is from my hike out of the park when water levels were lower. When I actually crossed this segment, the water reached nearly my waist and I came dangerously close to falling in.
So the rest of that crossing was very sketchy. I don't know what people are talking about with knee deep. That was getting to in a very private place very quickly. There was just one segment of it which was really bad, but the rest of it was very easy. That one segment though, that was cold and deep. You need to warm up a little before I keep going, I think. Get some pants on. Get out of these Crocs.
After 2.5 hours of exhausted hiking following my ordeal in the river, I'd finally reached my destination for the night, Schwarzenbach Falls.
Looks like I got to Schwarzenbach just in time. That was a slog today, but somebody made an appearance, thankfully. Thor, down in the valley.
Capturing this scene was a really bittersweet moment. As I took this photo, I couldn't help but ruminate over nearly falling in the river and the potential danger of the water levels. I was incredibly excited for such great conditions, but I was worried about continuing on alone. Deep down, I knew I'd probably have to turn around early.
Well, hopefully this campsite will do for the night. Doesn't look like it's gonna accumulate water. It's not supposed to rain tonight. It's pretty high up, a little exposed for my taste, but it should be good. It's nice and dry. Everything else lower is pretty boggy, so yeah, here's hoping that this gets the job done. And hey, not a bad view either. Okay, morning from day 2. Got up at 4 o'clock to try and cross the Schwarzenbach River. River is definitely crossable right now. It looks pretty good. In fact, far easier than Crater Lake yesterday. But the reality is we're about to get, I did get a weather forecast this morning, and we're gonna have probably 3 more days of just non-stop rain. And I'm a little bit concerned that if I cross this and get to Half Hour Creek or cross Half Hour Creek, that I might not be able to get back across because the rain is raising the river levels quite a lot. In hindsight, maybe I should have crossed Crater Lake in the morning instead, but I have to admit that that experience kind of rattled me a little bit in crossing, because there was a moment where I lost my footing a little bit, and I thought that, you know, that could be me going for a swim. And you know, with a group, you can recover from that as long as you have other people who can help you out and take care of you, who have extra warm clothes that aren't soaking wet. But when you're on your own, there's a real risk of fatality from that. So I've made the hard decision to turn around and head back the way I came, and to try and get in contact with the outfitter and head back into town and call it early. Unfortunately, I think that's the prudent thing to do, given how challenging the first crossing was, and knowing that that was the easiest of the crossings. Anyway, let's head back to Pangon.
Making this decision was really difficult for me. I dreamt of this hike for so long, and to turn around here felt like giving up on my dream. As it turns out, however, I did make the right decision. I camped at ULU Shelter for the night, where I was woken up by the thundering sound of rockfall, and I left the park the next morning. Shortly after arriving in Pangon, I learned that the park had closed due to high river levels, and visitors were being helicoptered out. Had I stayed, I'd have been forced to leave anyway. After arriving in town, I also learned that flights had continued to be cancelled, and many people were now stranded in Pangon, myself included. Being unable to leave Pang and unable to go back into the park, I tried to find some other opportunities to explore hikes near town. Unfortunately for me, I had about as much luck in that effort as I did for the beginning of the trip. I tried hiking up Mount Duval, but took a wrong trail, eventually realizing this and having to turn around. Thankfully, I did come away with an image I liked.
So I've taken a little stop on the way up towards Mount Duval, or at least I think I'm headed towards Mount Duval. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think I found an intimate scene, which is pretty interesting. As I was hiking along the path here, I found these little brooks kind of crossing the path, and there's a few little spots where the stream doesn't really move too much, and it's developed these really interesting underwater bubbles that have just really cool shape to it. But because of the reflection from the sky, it's pretty hard to photograph in an interesting way. But I found that if I cover the scene with my jacket, I can actually break that reflection, and it almost looks like mounds of bubbles under the water. It's really strange, but yeah, I kind of like it. So if it works, I'll show it to you here.
Coming down from this little hike, I managed to slip on a rock and into a small creek, soaking all my clothes and my bag. But I was determined to make the most of my remaining time. I found a better path and tried again a few days later, even passing heaved permafrost along the way. Once again, my bad luck got the better of me. As I continued to gain elevation, the weather began to change, gradually reducing visibility and accumulating snow along the way. I did reach the top of the mountain with a friend I'd met a couple days earlier, but with absolutely no visibility. It was at this point I accepted that it was time to go home. I couldn't help but wonder if I'd ever see the sun again, and the answer was yes. I'd see the sun again on the day I left Pangon, also the same day Parks Canada reopened the park. Looking back on my trip, the number of things that went wrong is almost comical. And being so close yet so far from my dream location made it really easy to get down on myself. But I think it's also important to consider what went right. I met a ton of people who showed me tremendous kindness and helped me when I was truly in need. Despite the trip not being what I was dreaming of, it was a special one to me. It reminded me to take the good with the bad and to stay positive in tough situations. And certainly, these images will have some extra meaning to me in the end. So is this where my efforts in the Arctic will end? I think the best way to answer that is to quote a movie. I'll be back.